A dog's last goodbye. The rain fell softly over Arlington National Cemetery, soaking the fresh earth where a hero would soon rest. Rows of white headstones stood solemnly, a silent tribute to the countless soldiers who had served their country. The funeral was small but dignified. Close friends, family, and a handful of fellow veterans gathered to say goodbye to Master Sergeant Danny Thompson. Danny had served in the military for over 20 years, dedicating his life to protecting his country. But among all the brothers in arms he had fought alongside, there was one companion who had been closer than anyone else, his canine partner, Shadow. The black German Shepherd had served with Danny in multiple combat zones, sniffing out explosives, tracking enemies, and protecting his handler with unwavering loyalty. When Danny retired from service, he fought to adopt Shadow, and he won. For the past 5 years, they had lived together in peaceful retirement, spending quiet mornings walking in the park, watching the sunset on the porch, and simply enjoying each other's company. But fate had other plans. Danny had suffered a fatal heart attack just days before, leaving behind his family, his fellow veterans, and his beloved Shadow. Now, as the honor guard prepared to fold the flag draped over Danny's coffin, Shadow sat beside the casket, ears drooping, eyes filled with sadness. The chaplain spoke solemnly, delivering a final blessing, and the bugler raised his trumpet to play taps. The mournful tune echoed through the cemetery, sending shivers through everyone's spine. Then, something unexpected happened. As the soldiers carefully folded the flag, Shadow suddenly let out a heartbreaking whimper. He stood, his tail still, his ears alert. Then, before anyone could react, the faithful canine leaped onto the casket. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Shadow placed his front paws on the wooden surface and sniffed at it desperately. A deep, sorrowful cry rumbled in his throat, a sound that no one had ever heard before. Then slowly, he lowered himself down, pressing his body against the casket as if trying to be close to his handler one last time. Tears welled in the eyes of the soldiers, the family members, and even the toughest veterans present. It was a moment of pure love and grief, a bond that even death could not break. A young Marine approached Shadow carefully, kneeling beside him. "Come on, buddy," he whispered gently, placing a comforting hand on the dog's back. But Shadow refused to move. His body trembled as he let out another whimper. He had lost his partner, his best friend, his reason for being. The funeral service paused. No one had the heart to pull Shadow away from Danny. The chaplain took a deep breath, his voice thick with emotion. Let him say goodbye. Minutes passed, and the rain continued to fall, mixing with the tears of those gathered. Finally, as if sensing that his final moment with Danny was slipping away, Shadow lifted his head. His dark eyes held a sadness beyond words. Then, with a deep sigh, he gently licked the wooden surface of the coffin. One last goodbye. A handler from the K9 unit stepped forward, gently leading Shadow away. The dog resisted at first, his paws dragging against the wet grass. But finally, he relented, casting one last glance at the casket before allowing himself to be led away. The honor guard resumed their duties, presenting the folded flag to Danny's grieving widow. But as the ceremony concluded, there was not a dry eye in the crowd. Danny had been a hero in life, but he had also been something more. He had been loved, and even in death that love endured. A few weeks later, the family received unexpected news. The K9 unit had decided that Shadow, now retired from duty, would be adopted by Danny's son, Michael, a young police officer who had followed in his father's footsteps. It was the perfect home for the grieving dog, a place where he would still feel a connection to Danny. On the day Shadow arrived at Michael's home, the dog hesitated at the door, his ears flicking as he took in the new surroundings. But when Michael knelt down and softly called his name, Shadow moved forward, resting his head against the young man's chest. It was a new beginning, a second chance at love and companionship. And though he would never forget his first partner, Shadow would continue to serve in the way he knew best, by offering unwavering loyalty to those who needed him most. And so in the heart of one family, the spirit of a fallen soldier lived on, not just in memory, but in the steadfast devotion of a dog who had loved him until the very end. The weeks following the funeral were difficult for everyone who had known Master Sergeant Danny Thompson. His absence was felt in every corner of his home, in the streets where he once walked with Shadow, and in the hearts of those who had loved him. But no one felt the loss as deeply as Shadow. Despite moving in with Michael, Danny's son, Shadow seemed lost. He would often sit by the door, staring out as if waiting for his partner to return. At night, he would wander through the house, sniffing at Danny's old jacket, which Michael had kept draped over a chair. The once energetic and alert German Shepherd barely touched his food, and some nights soft whimpers could be heard from where he slept. Michael, a police officer in the K-9 unit, understood grief. He had seen it in the eyes of families who had lost loved ones in the line of duty. But this was different. Shadow was more than just a dog. He was a soldier, a partner, and a friend who had lost the person he was sworn to protect. One evening, after another long shift at the police department, Michael found Shadow lying on the porch, staring at the horizon. He sat beside the dog, placing a hand on his thick fur. "I miss him too, buddy," he murmured. Shadow let out a deep sigh, his ears flicking but his eyes never leaving the distance. Michael took a deep breath, a decision forming in his mind. Maybe Shadow needed purpose again, just like his father had given him. A new mission. The next day, Michael took Shadow to the police department's K-9 training facility. The other officers welcomed him with open arms, many of them having served alongside Danny. They recognized the pain in Shadow's eyes and the weight of his loss. Captain Reynolds, the head of the K-9 unit, knelt in front of Shadow and studied him carefully. "He still has the instincts," he said, "but more importantly, he still has the heart." For the first time in weeks, something in Shadow's posture changed. His ears perked, his muscles tensed ever so slightly. He recognized the familiar sense of the training grounds, the sounds of commands being given, the presence of other K-9s. It was a place of discipline, but also of partnership. Michael worked with Shadow every day, using the same training techniques his father had used. At first, Shadow seemed hesitant, unwilling to follow commands or engage in drills. But then Michael did something different. He used Danny's voice. Michael had spent his whole life listening to his father, learning from him, even mimicking the way he gave orders to Shadow. And when he spoke with the same firm yet gentle tone, something inside the dog shifted. Shadow's ears twitched, and his tail wagged, just slightly, but it was there. "That's it, boy," Michael encouraged. "We're in this together." The call that changed everything. Months passed, and Shadow slowly found himself again. He and Michael became a team, just as he and Danny had once been. Though the pain of loss never truly faded, the bond between them grew stronger with each passing day. Then one cold evening the call came in. A little girl, 7-year-old Emma Carter, had gone missing from a hiking trail near the outskirts of town. Her parents were frantic, and a search party had been organized. As officers gathered at the scene, Michael knew there was only one dog who could help. He turned to Shadow, who sat at his side, alert and ready. "You up for this, buddy?" Michael asked. Shadow didn't hesitate. He barked once, a sharp, confident sound. Taking one of Emma's small stuffed animals, Michael let Shadow take in the scent. The dog's nose twitched, his eyes darkened with focus, and within seconds he took off, leading Michael and the search team deep into the woods. They moved quickly, following Shadow as he weaved through trees, over fallen branches, and past rocky terrain. He never hesitated, his instincts sharper than ever. It was as if Danny himself was guiding them through the darkness. Then Shadow stopped. His ears twitched, and he let out a sharp bark before lunging forward toward a thicket of bushes. Michael rushed after him, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. And then there she was. Emma sat curled up beneath the bushes, her small frame trembling with cold and fear. Her tear-streaked face lit up the moment she saw the dog standing over her, his warm, protective presence offering comfort. "Shadow found her," Michael called over the radio. Tears of relief filled the eyes of the officers and Emma's parents as they rushed to her side. The little girl, still shivering, reached out and wrapped her tiny arms around Shadow's neck.